Welcome to Coming Home, Survive and Thrive in Homeschooling. It's question and answer time again today. It's been a wee while since we've done this. Today's questions are going from the one extreme to the other. I've got a basic how do I get started question and another one that would be an in-depth subject. Let's get to that. First question. I've been considering homeschooling for a while, but I'm feeling indecisive as to what to do. What advice can you give me? Well, I would first of all say it's perfectly normal to feel indecisive about a really important decision you're going to make for your family. When I saw your question, I started recalling the process that my husband and I went through before we actually made the final decision. For us, it took about a year of slowly working it all through, asking questions, trying to think about it, because bear in mind, back in the day when we did it, we're talking, 20, 25 years ago, really, it wasn't very well known. And it was totally out of what was normal in my peer group. And I didn't know really anybody else close to me that homeschool. I just assumed, like most other people, that your children had to have difficulties, or maybe you were religious extremists or whatever. So we started off thinking about it. And as the year went by, I can compare it to like a changing ratio, so that let's say, for you even to consider it a possibility, it has to be ranking, say, out of 10 at about 2 or 3. So let's say 20, 30%, 70, 80% against. And as the year went by and we thought and prayed and talked about it some more and just let time do its work, as the year went by, the ratio of our for and against started to move more in favor of the yes side, so that by the time the end of the year came around, we were practically at about 70, 80% yes, 20, 30% no. And we'd just come around at that by just simply letting a natural thinking process happen as the year went by. And once we got to that very high percentage that yes, we were going to do it, filling in that gap between the 20 and 30% actually happened really, really quickly, because that involved just needing a few more extra things ticked off or questions answered. And actually, to be fair, there is always that very small measure of, am I doing the right thing? Have I made a really serious mistake here? And I don't think that is to be overlooked. Know that is normal. And on those days of questioning, did I do the right thing? You're not going to mentally struggle so much over that. The other reason why I think that it is really normal is because when you just go with what is our cultural and social expectation, and you put your child into preschool and then they graduate and they go to school, you're not deciding to do that really. All you're doing is just moving along with the routine and the general social expectations. But if you move out of what is considered common, you are taking on that decision upon yourself. In other words, you haven't delegated any more. If you let the school do the job, you've delegated it. You don't have to think about it or worry about it. There's no indecision. You just have done it. So the indecision sometimes can come about because it's a very heavy weight on your mind, and fair enough. It's probably a good idea to sit down with your pen and paper and actually write down what is bothering you. What is it that, oh, I can't decide this, yes, no, maybe, what about this? Write them down. What's bothering you? What are your doubts? What is the biggest question that you've got, the biggest worry that you've got? Identify that one first. Don't worry about all the little insignificant things. What is the game changer in that list of do I, don't I, indecisiveness? Address that one thing. Don't address it when you're feeling really tired. So after a busy day, late at night, when everything floods in on you and you are emotionally exhausted, that is not your time to think about these things and try and decide. You need to sit down with a cup of tea or coffee, whatever your tipple is, and try and identify it. Then go and find someone to talk to about it. Go and find a veteran homeschooler who has been doing this for years, came to terms with whatever that doubt is or worry you've got years ago, and possibly has to readdress that concern ongoing. So let me just draw that into a conclusion. Firstly, totally normal. Do not panic or worry that your indecision is an indication that this is not the right decision for you to make for your family. It's normal. Secondly, deal with the indecisiveness. Identify what they are and then work on them. Start with the biggest issue first. You'll probably find that once you've addressed that worry or doubt, that all of those smaller things will just fade away into not very much at all. The third thing you need to know is that just because you start on your homeschooling journey, it does not mean that you are never going to doubt your decision again. Trust me, you will. And therefore, to be indecisive now is a really good thing, because when you've worked your way through it, you are going to know without a shadow of a doubt why you have started on this homeschooling lark. And you'll know when you get to those days that I call black days, you are going to know your why. You'll be able to overlook those feelings of angst and doubt and upset that you're ruining your children forever, and you'll be able to revisit that why, because you've done it already. The other thing too is to remember, this isn't a key that you've locked the door against public schooling and you've thrown away that key or that option forever. If you ever get to the stage when, for whatever reason, homeschooling is actually not the best thing for your children or you at that point in your life, absolutely, you have that decision. And then you can bring them back home again later. You don't have to feel that you're making a forever decision on the day that you make your application for a homeschooling exemption. We used to tell people who said, oh, well, what are you going to do when your child gets to intermediate? How are you going to homeschool them then? Like it was going to be really, really hard. And then what are you going to do when your child gets to high school age? Well, we just make a decision year by year, and that would immediately get them off our back. They would be relieved, like it was their responsibility to be concerned on our behalf for our children, which is a different topic in itself. But in an interesting kind of way, even saying that is a reassurance to yourself. You are not making a decision necessarily forever. You can reassess this at any time you please. Question number 2. My child is reluctant to learn to write. How do I help her do this? Now, this is not the writing of a story. It's actually the picking up the pencil or the pen and putting it to paper, that kind of reluctance to write. I would be asking you, how old is she? If she's only 5, 6, she's still quite young. Don't worry so much about it. I would continue just to keep reading a lot to her so that she's still absorbing a lot of literary skills and information. I would always make available, I'd leave them out on the table, colourful books with clear lines to write on, big, fat, chunky pens or pencils. Sometimes it's their fine motor skills that they feel that they can't actually have control over the pen or the pencil that we're accustomed to. If you can find pens or pencils that are shaped in a triangular rather than a circular, or even a hexagonal or pentagonal shape, they can be easier for little fingers to grip. So leave these implements out. The urge to write or to give it a go just might come over them, and they just might climb up at the table and start to write. Is she observing you writing? Things have changed so much in the manner of communication between now and when we were at school, and certainly even in our early working life. Goodness me, the only computer we had when I was at work was an electric typewriter. We wrote everything down, but now not so much. So it can be an exception actually for a child to observe you with what you're doing in your everyday life. How often are you picking up a pen or a pencil and using it, as opposed to doing all your written communication via your phone or your laptop? There have been some people saying, oh, it doesn't matter so much because the future is in computers and it's going to be an obsolete skill anyway. Oh, nobody knows that for sure. And even if it is, there are going to be days when the computer crashes and you need to write something down. So your child needs to write in an orderly manner. It needs to be more than just legible. It needs to be orderly and neat, which is a process that you go through and aim for over the years. Letters need to be joined together correctly. I'm thinking of letters such as A, where you start the letter A and where you come around and go up and down, as I used to say to my children. The top of that stick needs to join where you started that A. Make it look like an A and not a C. Ditto with other letters of the alphabet that start with that round shape. Your child needs to know that uppercase letters are usually always bigger than lowercase letters. A capital T does not go in the middle of a word. A capital T goes at the front of a word if it's a proper noun or the first word of a sentence. Little things like these have been important over the years because they're not actually so little. The modern thinking has been, it doesn't really matter so long as they're communicating successfully. Well, why did it matter for so long? As decades and millennia go by, accurate communication is actually really important. If somebody has to slow down or trip over the way you've written because they can't actually interpret or read it clearly, you're slowing down important communication skills. So I realize that's after the child has eventually learned to pick up a pen or a pencil, as they would start with, and write. You can use your finger and write shapes on a window that's got condensation all over it. If they're reluctant to use the tactile pen and paper, you can use the sand down at the beach with a stick or your finger. Anything that's going to encourage your child to exercise those fine motor skills that she needs in her fingers and her hands in order to be able to hold a pen is good. Helping maybe to hang clothes on the line. She's squeezing those pegs together with her fingers and her thumb. That's a nice little bit of exercise there. But for the most part, try and chill about it. She will actually learn to write. Don't be concerned that she's not writing by the time she's 5 or 5.5. She just might not be ready for it. And quite frankly, this is why you're homeschooling, because you're teaching them according to when they are ready to learn the next skill, so that they're always going to love writing because they don't associate it with something that they found difficult or didn't understand. So I said at the beginning that I was moving from one extreme to the other for homeschooling questions today. So this is down the other end, a fairly serious subject for many. Should our children learn Latin? I have heard it said before, you don't need to learn Latin, it's a dead language, why would you ever do that? Fair enough, it is a dead language, as in nobody actually speaks it anymore. In fact, it's been so dead for so very long, nobody's actually really confident as to the correct pronunciation for some Latin words. So, why would your children need to learn Latin? There's several reasons I can think of here. Latin is a logical language. It is phonetic. It is written and pronounced exactly as it sounds. Secondly, it is the base language of 4 or 5 languages I can think of, the Romance languages they're called. So should your child wish to learn French and Spanish ongoing, that will actually aid them in it. It will improve their English skills because once you're learning Latin, a whole lot of English becomes very obvious and sensible. They're going to learn clearly grammar, nouns, verbs, adjectives, everything else that makes up the nitty-gritty of a language. Another aspect to seriously consider teaching Latin to your children is that if they follow the sciences or maybe go into medicine, having even a basic rudimentary knowledge of Latin is really, really going to help. Because if you think about it and look at all of the technical terms in the sciences and Latin, and even in botanicals, they're all based on Latin. And you might not know what a certain word is you're looking at, but if you can figure out the beginning, the middle, and even the ending of that word, you can even figure out what part of the body that word is referring to. So it's actually a real boon if you know your child is going to head into those areas or has an interest in them. Absolutely, Latin is a worthwhile subject to learn. While they're children, and even in their young teens, their minds are so capable of learning languages. And I would suggest to you too that having Latin tucked under them as a basic skill, they don't need to be fluent in it. Even just a couple of years of exposure to learning Latin well is sufficient. Having that as an asset in their skill and their education set is going to be more useful to them than many of the other languages that we are being encouraged to teach our children. All right, that's enough for questions and answers for today. I love getting your questions. I cannot do question and answer series without your questions. And I'm here to download all of our experience and knowledge that we've gained over the years. So the chances are if you've got a question, I can answer it. And if I don't know the answer, I'll go and find the answer for you. So if this podcast has been helpful to you, and I do hope it has, please share it around others that you know would appreciate it. And if you can subscribe or like it or even comment, it helps the algorithms make sure that podcasts like this are more likely to turn up in people's channels. And don't forget our website, cominghomeinfo.com. You'll find plenty of resources, and you'll find a way to contact me too if you need a consultation. All right, lovely people, I will catch up with you next week. Bye-bye.